Sometimes in life, you do a silly prank that turns out to be doomsday for someone else. Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I was a kid. I grew up in a huge house by the beach with my little sister Amy. She was a year younger than me. Being the youngest and the pretty little princess of our family, everyone loved her like crazy. My mom always gave me a lecture on how I need to be the big brother and take care of her all the time. All that overflown love spoiled my sister to such an extent that she became stubborn and nagging whenever things didn't go her way. In front of my parents and family, she would behave like she is the angel on the earth, but in reality, she was different in the wrong way. She never apologized after making a mistake, and no matter how many times she got punished, she always found her way around it. I guess it was partially my mother's fault for being too easy on her. I still remember the day the principal called Dad saying there has been an accident in school. I was with my grandparents, but when I came home, I heard a girl named Sally was found dead in the girls' bathroom. No one knows what exactly happened to her, but it seemed like she slipped somehow and smashed her face on the glass mirror, leading to the broken glass, cutting her eyeballs in half. She bled to death. Yeah, it was a pretty violent sight. When the cops inquired everyone about this incident, the school janitor said he saw Amy coming out of the washroom right before Sally's body was discovered. But she was just a little girl. Who would suspect her, right? But I knew. I knew what she was. With more days passing, I started to become scared of her. Yeah, scared of my little sister. Funny, huh? But when you wake up in the middle of the night finding your weird sister standing near your bed, looking at you with her shiny green eyes and expressionless face, you can't laugh it off. Why did she do that? I don't know, and I never dared to ask. Whoever didn't agree with her or said no faced a consequence labeled under the tag of an accident. She loved stomping on any insect, even if it's miles away from her. She grabbed butterflies with her soft red fingers and tore their wings apart with joy. Whenever birds hurt their wings and landed in our backyard, instead of aiding them like every normal kid, Amy fed the already suffering bird to our neighbor's ferocious dog. She chuckled in excitement as the dog shredded the flapping bird into bits and pieces. My parents never paid attention to her cruel nature, even if I told them repeatedly. But one day, things took a dangerous turn. We used to go to the beach almost every weekend. I loved walking by the shore, submerging my feet into the salty waves. At some distance from the shore, there were rusty old caves. The area was secluded, as very few people went there. Whenever I needed a place to escape, I used to go there. I pretended like the caves were my kingdom, and I was the king of an invisible ray. I kept lots of my toys there, and everything I could collect from the beach. I never told Amy about this place, but nothing can be hidden from her vulture eyes. One weekend, we went to the beach and my parents put up a small picnic near the shore. Amy got busy building her sandcastles and then demolishing them with one kick. I think she felt more joy in destroying them than building them. I secretly snuck out from there and went to my territory. I put up a wooden plank on the entrance of a small cave like a door to my castle. I slowly shifted the plank and got inside. I was just about to close it when I heard a chuckle behind me. Out of fear and shock, I turned around and found Amy sitting inside the cave already. "You think you can hide from me?" she said in her cold, squeaky voice. "I wasn't hiding from you. I just came here to be with myself," I replied and sat down on the ground. "You hate me, right? Secretly, you wish I was never born, right?" "What? I don't wish that." "Oh, but I do. I wish I was the only child and mommy and daddy never had you. I would have gotten all their attention. You anyway get that. Don't worry, once I grow up, I'll move far away from you all." "You're such a dork. Come on, let's go." Amy got up and started to walk out of the cave. Where are you going?" I asked impatiently. "I saw a big cave at the back. Don't you want to explore that?" Her eyes sparkled as she said this. "But we can lose our way. Besides, what if there's something inside those caves? Like what? A tiger? Don't be an idiot. Let's go. Also, I want to try this out." So far, I didn't notice her hands, but as I did, I saw she was holding Dad's metal detector. I know Dad keeps his things in his study, and we're not supposed to touch them. I said in a tense voice, "Why did you bring that? You know we shouldn't be playing with Dad's equipment." "Oh, come on. He wouldn't know unless you tell him. And you won't tell him." I knew she was not going to back off. We came out and started walking to the big cave behind the bushes. The summer wind created a rustling sound in the coconut trees. The big old cave stood like an epitome of mystery. Moss and fungus were growing all over its wall. Amy stopped right in front of the cave and stared at the dark, hollow entrance ahead. "Why are we even here?" I asked fearfully. "We are going to look for treasure. Don't you remember the story Mom told us last night? Caves like this are filled with treasures. Now let's go for our treasure hunt." Amy handed me a small flashlight and told me to show the way. I realized how mean and selfish she is. If anything bad came at us, she wanted me to face it. My own sister was using me as her shield just to have some fun in a stupid treasure hunt. But she was very greedy. If Amy found something attractive, my parents had to buy it for her, and if they didn't, she didn't hesitate to steal it at all. Mom's story triggered her to think she was going to find a hidden treasure inside this cave. That's why she brought Dad's metal detector. But I was sure. I knew she would go home empty-handed. I was walking with a flashlight while she strolled with her metal detector behind me. The continuous beeping of the detector echoed in the cave. Accidentally, I flashed a light on the ceiling, and an army of ugly, stinky bats flew over us, scaring the hell out of me. "Ah! You silly! Don't flash your light on them, idiot!" Amy didn't respect me at all. Maybe it was her cruel nature that made her immune to all kinds of jump scares. She snatched the flashlight from my hand and took the lead. Without saying a single word, I followed her. Even though she was not the perfect sister, I couldn't ditch her inside a dark cave. After walking for a minute or so, the metal detector started to make a rapid sound, denoting it had found something. Amy crouched down and started to dig the wet, muddy ground with her beach shovel. Within 5 seconds, she screamed in joy. "Look what I found!" She lifted her hand, and in the flashlight, I saw a sparkling bracelet. Her face lit up even more greed. The bracelet was shining like the stars in the night sky. I didn't at all expect something like this to be found here. Amy picked up the detector and started walking ahead. I stopped her, saying, "Well, you got your treasure. Let's go now. It's getting dark and Mom will be worried." "No way. We have just started. If you want to go, you can go." "Fine. I am done here." I turned back while Amy went in with the detector and flashlight. The beeping sound faded away with her footsteps. I was about to come out when I heard my sister's spine-chilling scream. I ran inside, irrespective of the darkness. I could barely see ahead when I heard a collapse of boulders. At the end of the cave, I found Amy's flashlight. The glass got broken, but was still on. A beeping sound was going crazy in the dark, and there was another sound in that empty cave. The sound of a little girl choking. I flashed the light following the sound, and I couldn't blink anymore. Amy was lying on the ground, smashed under big rocks falling from the roof of the cave. Her partial face had no features. Flesh and blood were all over the place. But with the half-remaining face, she was staring at me. She was looking at me with one eye and trying to tell me something, but the excessive blood choked her. She coughed blood. Her body trembled like those wounded birds when the neighbor's dog ate them alive. I will never be able to get that sight out of my mind. My parents rescued me with the help of the cops. After searching for us for almost an hour, they finally came to look at these caves and found me standing like a statue near my dead sister. It was all an accident. No one had any doubt of that. My mom never spoke a word after that. Cops said the cave's roof somehow collapsed and it was nothing but an unfortunate event. I won't say that I don't miss her, but we learned to move on. I accepted her fate and grieved for her terrible death for years. But yesterday, my mom passed away in her sleep, and her attorney handed me a letter that she left for me. The letter read, "My dear Jim, we all loved Amy in our own ways. I know you resent me for not raising her with more discipline and good habits. I agree, I was weak, but then I finally realized. The day Sally died, I knew what a monster I had created. I had to put an end to this. The cave's roof, didn't collapse on its own. I was the one who buried the bracelet inside and told Amy the made-up story about treasure just to make her go there looking for it. I sacrificed my own child so that she can't hurt anyone else. It was better that she got the punishment from me rather than rotting in a cell for the rest of her life. I hope you forgive me for taking your sister away too soon. I am glad that at least one of my children grew up to be a human being. Love, Mom.
Hey guys, I see many of you commenting on my videos that this channel deserves 1 million subscribers. But I also see the percent of people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. So, if you like the content, want to support my channel, and want to see this channel reach 1 million subscribers, or maybe 500,000 subscribers, then go ahead, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. It's free, and you can always change your mind later.
My parents worked as wildlife conservationists. They always encouraged me to take part in trekking clubs, summer camps, or any activity that includes nature. I learned a lot while exploring the wilderness, but this one memory still makes my entrails churn in disgust. I went to a summer camp in Sebago Lake. My parents went to Australia for a project at that time. Instead of sending me to my grandparents, they sent me to this camp so that I can learn some skills while having a good time with other kids. The camp instructor was a friend of my parents. I never knew his first name because everyone called him Mr. Bailiff. He was a strong, healthy man in his late 40s who always inspired us to take the extra step for the sake of adventure. He had a small team of senior campers who were assigned to navigate us through the day-to-day routine. The senior campers were boys and girls aging from 16 to 17 years. All of them were pretty familiar with the camp style, which made me realize they have been with Mr. Bailiff for a long time. I, on the other hand, wasn't a newcomer either, as it was my third summer camp. I have always been an active child and loved taking part in almost everything. Apart from the co-curricular, I loved taking part in the summer treasure hunt. Almost every kid waited for it eagerly. To keep the game more spontaneous, Mr. Bailiff introduced this all-of-a-sudden technique. Whenever the air horn went on, everyone rushed outside to find a big jar filled with clues. The teams were divided, and the game began. We had to search all over the campsite, and sometimes even went inside the woods looking for clues. I was loving my stay there, but with time, I started to realize Mr. Bailiff is not the kind of man I thought he is. He used to get rude and insulting at times. If a kid couldn't pull off the task up to his expectations, he beat the shit out of that kid with his horrible choice of words. The anger in his eyes made him look ferocious when he scolded a kid over nothing. The senior campers never stopped him, which implies they were too scared to face him. Some seniors explained to us that Mr. Bailiff is only a strict instructor and means no harm. But what he did during our warm-up session made me feel disgusted. There was this one boy named Kurt who loved eating a lot. He was a bit overweight, but we were just kids. At that age, no one could say no to chocolate pudding. Kurt loved chocolate pudding and couldn't resist himself. After breakfast, we went to our wilderness exploration with Mr. Bailiff. He was teaching us about the different kind of plants and animals residing in our ecosystem. Everyone was listening to him with great attention when a girl screamed in fear. We all turned to her and saw her pointing at the ground behind a bush. Mr. Bailiff walked to her, and everyone else followed. As we reached near the bush, we saw rotten remains of a dead possum. Flies were hovering on it, and a bad stench covered the air nearby. Mr. Bailiff turned to us and said, "No need to be scared. This is just a circle of life. Does anyone want to step ahead to bury this little guy?" No one wanted to, but these were Mr. Bailiff's weird life lessons that we had to abide by. When no one stepped up, he chose Kurt to do this job. With an overfilled tummy and long walk in the heat, Kurt was feeling uncomfortable enough. He said in a scared voice, I don't want to do this, sir." "Why? Don't you know how to fig dirt?" "No, I do, but I don't want to go near it. It stinks." Mr. Bailiff screamed at him as usual and forced him to bury that possum's remain under the ground. Kurt dug up the first chunk of mud, and I heard him gag once. No doubt he was feeling nauseous, and as soon as he leaned on to move the possum using a stick, he puked on himself. The undigested pudding was all over his clothes. He started sobbing out of embarrassment, but Mr. Bailiff didn't spare him even after that. He yelled in his strict voice, I don't care if you vomit everywhere or even shit your pants. If you don't finish this task, I will make you eat your puke, boy. What other option did he have? He did as he was told while being drenched in his puke. The camp of enjoyment soon started to turn into the camp of torture. Mr. Bailiff was just too smart. He tortured the kids in the name of wilderness exploration and made it seem like he was teaching us how to overcome our comfort zones. Every kid in my dorm wished this nightmare to end so that they could return home. On the last week of our summer camp, we were counting days for it to end when Mr. Bailiff announced a treasure hunt. Following the rules, we got divided into teams and handed over the clues. There were artificial obstacles created for us to increase the thrill. Small hurdles such as crawling through a muddy ditch, jumping fences, climbing ropes to collect a clue was a part of it. Our team had to search for one clue inside the woods. Signboards were scattered throughout to give us hints on where the last clue can be. We were a team of 4, and to win the game, we decided to split up and look for it. I was walking by a small trail when I felt someone go behind the tree nearby. I couldn't see at first, but a small hand appeared behind the tree. Hello? Is it Jim? No answer came. I walked close to the tree and peeked to see who's behind it, but found no one. Running footsteps made a rustling sound on the dried leaves, and a chuckle appeared. I turned around and saw a small boy dressed as a Boy Scout. He was of my age. A weird smile took place on his face, and he said, "Are you playing the treasure hunt?" I nodded yes and asked, "Are you from our camp? I have never seen you before." He looked up to the tree branch above his head and said, "Is Mr. Bailiff around?" I said in a confused voice, "Yeah, he is conducting the game. I have to find the last clue or else..." "Parker, who are you talking to?" I found Mr. Bailiff standing behind me with a pissed off face. I was going to introduce him to that boy, but he was nowhere to be found. Mr. Bailiff started scolding me for wasting time when I noticed the boy coming from the bush nearby. I pointed at him, telling Mr. Bailiff that he is the one I was talking to, and Mr. Bailiff's face turned pale. He stared at the boy with a shocking face, and for the first time, I saw him scared. He said in a fumbled voice, "But you were dead." The boy chuckled and looked at the branch above his head and then back at him. "Why did you force me to climb this tree?" He started to walk towards Mr. Bailiff. I was stunned to see how excessively scared Mr. Bailiff was of this little boy. The more the boy walked close to him, the more Mr. Bailiff stepped back. He was sweating in fear and mumbled something. I couldn't make out what he was trying to say, but I noticed he was going to a steep edge. Mr. Bailiff was one step away from the edge when the boy stopped. He stood silently for some time, and then his head turned back at me. Just his head. I could hear the crushing of bones as his head turned to his back, and he looked at the tree once again, and then ripped off his head with his dirty little hands. Mr. Bailiff screamed one last time, and I heard a huge fall. I must have fainted too after seeing such a horrific sight. The senior campers rescued me and called the cops. Mr. Bailiff was taken to the hospital. Even though he didn't die, he broke his neck in such a terrible way that he has become paralyzed for the rest of his life. Before I could ask who that boy was, I overheard an incident that happened 2 years back. A boy named David came here for the summer. During one game of treasure hunt, Mr. Bailiff went a bit too rough on him and forced him to climb that tall tree, irrespective of the dangers that could occur. The boy was scared and traumatized, but Mr. Bailiff went on pushing him like always. Suddenly, he slipped and fell to the ground before anyone could catch him. He broke his neck and never woke up again. His parents were told it was just an accident, and no one revealed how responsible Mr. Bailiff was for that. I am happy that the poor kid got his revenge. A man like Mr. Bailiff deserves it. I went to medical school out of grave interest in human anatomy. On the campus of our medical school, we had an adjacent hospital. Sometimes, professors took our anatomy classes in the hospital labs. Due to this, we had direct access to the hospital morgue. Sometimes, we brought several limbs, a pair of brains, or a dissected eye to understand the human body better. The smell of death surpasses every odor in this world. I have witnessed students collapsing on the morgue floor while witnessing embalming or dissection of a particular organ. Slowly, everyone catches up because you know what to expect before choosing this field. But there's this one girl in our batch who never did well around a corpse. For the sake of this story, we'll call her Lizzie. Lizzie was labeled as the scaredy cat of our batch, and many ridiculed her for weak nerves. One day, when I went to the cafeteria and saw Lizzie sitting on a corner bench and crying silently, I felt bad for her, so I walked up to her. "Hey, are you all right?" She quickly wiped her tears and replied in a low voice. Yes, I'm fine. Listen, if you want, I can help you to get better at the practical." "You would? But why?" "Because I know you are good at this. All you need is some little practice." A smile of hope blossomed on her face, and she agreed. Since that day, after classes, Lizzie and I started to work on our practical skills on a corpse. Sometimes, to make things easier for her, I even instructed her to operate on a dummy first and then go for a real dead body. She started to get better with time. One day, I was going to my room after a practice session with Lizzie when Ben pulled me aside. Ben was the notorious one in our group and always walked around with his two sidekicks, Justin and Tim. Needless to say, he's the one who made fun of Lizzie the most. "Having fun with your little girlfriend, huh?" "We are just good friends, Ben, and it's none of your business anyway." Yeah, I know. But you know what, pretty boy? You helping her can create a problem for all of us." I didn't understand how helping Lizzie can create problems, so I kept staring at him with a confused face. He came close to me and said, "You know, she's already doing great in the theories, and it's almost impossible to beat her there." So, if she gets better in practical too, she will be a competitor for the special scholarship program. And you and I both know only two people are going to get that. One can be you, and one can be me. Then why bring this extra competition? Be smart, Andrew. If you were so confident that you will get in, then why bother about the number 2? You better concentrate on your studies instead of others' achievements. I walked away like a boss, and I could see his face turn cold with my unsatisfying reply. He gave me an evil grin and walked away. I knew people like him can only talk, so I ignored it. But I failed to see the bad omen lurking behind all of this. The next day, our professor was teaching us how to do a bypass surgery when Ben pulled a disgusting stunt. Lizzie was standing right next to the professor, and she was already a bit grossed out seeing the blood and foul liquids dripping out the disposal bucket. I was standing on the opposite side and assuring her with calm eyes that she is going to be all right. When Ben intentionally tripped on the bucket, making it fly in the air and then landing on Lizzie. All of that disposed of materials mixed with fell all over her face and body. She screamed in terror and started vomiting on the floor for not being able to take the rancid smell. We took her away, and I watched a cruel smile sparkling on Ben's face as he stood in the corner and enjoyed the show. Lizzie caught a high fever and missed out on her first practical exam of that semester. I knew he did it intentionally, but there was nothing I could do. A week went by, and Lizzie got better and rejoined the classes. We were all sitting in the lab one day when Ben stormed inside with a bunch of other students. "Are you all ready for the fun tonight?" he yelled in joy. Everyone raised their hands to cheer with him. Ben declared, "There's going to be a treasure hunt game tonight, and it's a tradition that everyone must take part in." After dinner, we all gathered in the community hall of the hostel. 3 groups were formed, with 5 members in each. I don't know why, but Ben selected Lizzie on his team. We were handed over clues and directed to find the treasure that had been hidden inside the hostel premises. Every group ran in different directions, following their clue. Lizzie looked at me with a nervous face, and I assured her she'll be okay. Ben's group went to the left, and mine to the right. The clues were very kiddish, and it didn't take us much to solve. Our team was walking down the emergency stairs, looking for the last and final clue, when I overheard a conversation. It was Justin and Tim. "Can't wait to see the show tonight. I want to see the look on her face when she finds the treasure." Poor Lizzie. Ben is going to scare the hell out of her. Hearing this, I rushed following their voices and found them going to the other side of the building. I grabbed Justin's t-shirt from behind and punched him on the stomach. "What the hell is going on? Where's Ben?" "Let me go. Tell me his evil plan, or I will punch you until your guts come out of your mouth." Ben has placed a severed hand under Lizzie's pillow, which is the treasure we're all playing for. Trust me, it's all him. I didn't do anything. He wanted to scare her. That's why he planned this entire hunt. I ran to Lizzie's room. I knew if she gets a shock again, she will probably leave this course and return home. She will lose all hope, and her life will be ruined by some jerk. As soon as I reached her room, I saw Ben standing outside her door and trying to listen to what's happening inside. Everyone else was also gathered there, and I felt sick seeing them make fun of a traumatized girl. Seeing me rush towards her room, he understood I'm going to bulldoze his bizarre treasure hunt. He jumped on me. Before I could free myself, his two sidekicks grabbed me from behind and pinned me down on the floor. No, pretty boy. You're not gonna ruin my plan. Just a minute more, and it will all be over. Lizzie will win after she finds the treasure. Justin and Tim grabbed me tightly. Ben placed his hands on my mouth so I couldn't alarm Lizzie by making any sound. Everything was quiet, and I could hear movements inside the room. I told myself, any minute now. Lizzie is probably heading to her bed, and she is soon to discover a bloody hand under her pillow. 5 seconds went by. A minute went by. 5 minutes went by, and we didn't hear her scream. By this time, everyone reached near her room and started to rebuke Ben for his disgusting prank. Getting scared by my group, Tim and Justin let me go, and a huge brawl took place. We all bolted inside the room, and I screamed, "Lizzie, are you?" But as we all stepped in the room, we found Lizzie sitting on her bed and munching the flesh of that rotten hand. Her entire mouth was smeared with blood and skin. Maggots were crawling on her lips from that hand. A reeking smell choked the fresh air in the room. Some started vomiting on the floor seeing her as that, and Tim ran away screaming. Ben stood there like a statue. Who knew a stupid treasure hunt will take such a terrifying turn? I took a step ahead, shaking with fear, and said in a fumbling voice, "Liz, what are you doing? Liz, stop it!" She looked at me as if she doesn't know who I am. Her eyes were wide, and for the first time, I didn't see any fear in them. She looked back at the hand, and then at Ben. A scary, hungry grin appeared on her face. She slowly got up from the bed and jumped on Ben all of a sudden. Before anyone could stop her, she bit a huge chunk of flesh from Ben's neck, and Ben fell on the floor, drowning in his own blood. Blood splattered all over the walls and on Lizzie's face. She wiped her face with Ben's blood and started laughing. I win! I found the treasure! I win! We couldn't save Ben that night. He had heart failure out of shock and fear. Also, he suffered excessive blood loss on his way to the ICU. Lizzie ended up in a mental institution. I still visit her sometimes. It aches my heart how she doesn't recognize me or anyone anymore. She just sits in the corner of her room and hums a creepy tune. She even laughs and giggles on her own and says, "I win. I found the treasure."